Well, good morning, and thank you, Jennifer. We have a long history. When she was at Brookings before, I'd read one of her papers along the way and tracked her down and hunted and said, "Listen, I'm just this like state senator here in Maryland, and what you're saying is so brilliant, and I really want to learn more from you." And now I'm so grateful that she's here at the Greater Baltimore Committee, helping us to improve the region on an everyday basis. Mark Anthony does an incredible job hiring great people, and so. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and with this room. I mean, I look around and I see so many friends and colleagues and partners that we've worked on many. I see our council president, Zeke Cohen, is here. I think I saw Senator Shelley Heddleman was somewhere here, I think, when I was walking in quickly. There she is over there. And all of our corporate partners and medical institutions and contractors. And this is an excellent room. It's there's Senator Chris West, too. I see. Welcome, Senator. So look, I am very pleased to be here. I was asked to kind of give a overview of sort of where things are. And the good news is there's not really much going on in the world these days. We're just navigating some of the largest crises that we've ever experienced in the history of the American democracy. But all in a day's work, So I was asked about what does the future of the region look like? And so, I really want to very briefly kind of touch on the needs, the challenges, and most importantly, the opportunities that we face over this next decade. We're going to be talking about how to move Maryland forward with a vision and determination, and that is what your entire day is going to be focused on. Without the people in this room, and I think if there's nothing else you take today from this, is that without you all who are here today, this region will never move forward. The leaders in this room will set the course for our shared prosperity and will set a path towards progress. I want to be very clear that I am unbelievably pleased in this moment at this time to be here to help chart that path with you. I don't think there could be a more prescient time to set a vision for the future. We are in exceedingly challenging times. People are more divided than ever. Economic and societal struggles are forcing families and businesses to scale back and retrench. And what we know is that the vast majority of people in this country and in the state of Maryland, and particularly in this region, are scared that the American and the Maryland and the Baltimore dream may no longer be in reach. I do not believe that to be true. Now, when people feel that way, what we know is that they sometimes will look towards the past for solutions when they believe times were more simpler or were more straightforward. Others are looking to address the conditions of today by filling the gaps, finding cracks and dams to fill, to make people feel or think differently. What I think we need to do is chart a different path, not go back or just go forward, but to find something different that allows us to row with the tide in a new way. We need to define exactly the future that we want, and we have to have the hard conversations to make the policies that will get us there. Now, of course, that's always easier said than done. Let's look at this past year. It was unbelievably challenging. Like the rest of the world, the state faced inflationary pressures, and we were trying to do more with less. We were asked to fill in more gaps and cover more societal gaps in our social fabric. We were looking at revenue structure that has not kept pace with modern realities, and because of that, the state of Maryland has been stagnant. So we had very difficult decisions to make. So we moved ahead. The cost of doing nothing just was not acceptable, and we had to, through very, very tough choices, close a structural gap that led us to cut $2 billion out of the state budget and address a $1.2 billion revenue package that was designed to protect working families and try to position Maryland for a more sustainable growth future. That targeted, balanced approach allowed us to avoid a lot of other revenue options that number of you all who are in this room today expressed extreme concern about, things like the business-to-business tax or the elimination of itemized deductions for individual Maryland taxpayers. Now, that said, even in the midst of this, we had to make some incredibly intense investments in the Transportation Trust Fund, which we will spend a bit of time today discussing in more detail. We worked with MDOT leadership. I know I saw some members of MDOT here today, and the entire administration, and we enacted a series of policies that will support the Transportation Trust Fund with the most significant infusion of resources since 2013. These decisions led to about $400 million of new revenue to the Transportation Trust Fund, which will allow the state to access federal dollars of upwards of $700 million for new investments for all parts of the entire state. This draft CTP for the 5-year CTP will be $21.5 billion of capital investments that will go directly into Maryland's economy. These investments support companies, large and small. They invest in their businesses, their employees, and their communities. These types of critical infrastructure investments are absolutely critical to our state's future. But we need a broader, more actionable strategy for the future that is relevant to today's reality. We need one that will focus with a laser-like intensity on growth in Maryland. This session, we have got to ask ourselves, what does it take to make sure that Maryland can grow in the midst of uncertainty? At the heart of this strategy is placemaking in a way that draws people from all walks of life, new residents, office workers, regional visitors, and conference attendees together in shared spaces. We see an example of that here. What happens when the Orioles have an amazing winning season? We all know it's electric. It is what brings us all together. It takes us out of our everyday routine and makes us realize that we are all in this shared experience as one. And as we think through investments in our public spaces, we have to make it easier to do business here in Maryland and invest in technologies that we know we have a competitive advantage in. Things like quantum and bioscience, things that we know that Maryland has the opportunity to win. We also have to make sure that our regulations are more predictable and efficient. Permits are processed timely, and that state and local agencies work together to move projects forward. We cannot have regulations that continue to be overly burdensome, that take months and months and months to see progress. These are all achievable and solvable problems that we can address today. Additionally, we need to make investments that capitalize on our assets and that exponentially move us towards progress. We need companies. The companies that we have in this region need space to scale and grow here, whether that means improving mobility or manufacturing facilities or ensuring that trained and talented workforce is coming and staying and flourishing here in the state of Maryland. We've got to pivot from a government base of government contracting to a private sector driven economy. I have said this over and over. We in Maryland were very stable for a very long time being a government focused state. And if you go to Apple and say, well, you're doing so well with the iPhone, you need to do something else, people would have said you were crazy. The reality is things have changed, and our reality has changed. We used to believe that the government contracting and the government federal funds that were available to the state of Maryland were forever predictable. What we are all experiencing right now in this moment is that simply is not true. However, here in the state of Maryland, because of the assets and because of the investments that, frankly, you all in the private sector have made, we are very well positioned in the state of Maryland for this transition. If we look at things like AI and technological advancements, as we've said from the GBC and having tech cities and tech centers across the region, we know that this is going to be the heart and soul of our job growth. We know that these are the places in transportation, logistics, warehousing, bioscience. This is where the region has a competitive advantage. We have amazing assets like the Port of Baltimore, the Inner Harbor, Hopkins, and our regional business cores, all of the folks that you were seeing that are sponsors of this event today. Those are what are going to allow us to win. And so ultimately what we need is to reimagine how do we use those assets for a brighter and more prosperous future. At the end of the day, growth is the single most important engine of progress. No matter the headwinds, no matter the state of play with the federal government, we must have a laser-like focus on growth in this new economy. I want to finish with one final thought, and I've been trying to think through this for quite a while. Where are we right now? In the midst of great uncertainty, in the midst of wondering what the future looks like with our federal government, with questions around budgets and inflation and international pressures, and I've started to think that we're sort of in this great loading era. Great loading era. And what does that mean? You all had that moment where you've got this new program that's coming. You've either updating that iPhone, or you've bought a new computer, or you've invested in some new technology, and you turn it on, and there's that moment with the circle of death, right? That's just the great loading moment. And you don't really know exactly entirely what's happening behind the scenes, but something is happening. Something is changing. Something big is going on that you don't fully see it all, but you can feel it in your core. You know in your gut, this is pretty exciting. There's a possibility. But also you have that moment of like complete and utter panic, thinking maybe this will never work. Maybe this is all going to fall apart in one quick second. And I would say that is where we are as a society right now. And you see it in other countries, you see it in the United States, but most importantly, you see it here in the state of Maryland, where you look around us. And on an everyday basis, when I drive through the city, when I go into communities, when I drive across the state, I see people that are excited about where they live. They are incredibly enthused about their prosperity in a local sense. And they have this huge question in the background about where we are going as a society. And so when I say that we're in this great loading moment, that future is coming. We know it is around us. And the reality is, it's not totally uncertain. It will be up to each and every individual in this room to create what that future will be. And so I want to thank the GBC. I want to thank what you all will be doing today, because there has never, ever been a time more important than right this moment for this room to be together to help set this vision so that not only are we loading, but we are thriving. So thank you all. Thank you for your work. I look forward to our years of partnership ahead, and let's get to work. Thank you.